Cloud computing is the need of the hour. No wonder we see many professionals wanting to move to cloud for a career, and also companies wanting to move to cloud to move their applications to different cloud vendors or different platforms that cloud computing has to offer to us. That is why Great Learning brings you this What is Cloud Computing video, where we would be talking about cloud computing at depth. Before we move further, I would like to inform you that at Great Learning, we have come up with Great Learning Academy initiative, where we offer 80 plus free courses that you people can register to, and on completion of these courses, you'd be getting a certification that you can add to your LinkedIn profile or even to your resume. This place is also great for people who are wanting to ask questions to industry professionals. Having said that, let us go ahead and take a look at the offerings of today's video. In this video, we'd be talking about why cloud computing. We would understand what is cloud computing. Then we would go ahead and discuss different cloud service models. We would take a look at what are the different deployment models that we have. We would talk about what are the popular service providers in the market. And finally, we would finish this session by taking a look at these different vendors practically. So let us go ahead and take a look at the first topic of today's discussion. So why cloud computing? I'm sure many of you have this question and it bothers quite a few, as in why are we moving to cloud? Why is it trending? And why should we start using cloud to start with, right? So when we talk about cloud computing, the first thing that I would like to mention is if we compare how businesses work these days, it is very different from what it used to happen few years back, or at least go back like 10 to 15 years from now, okay? Back then, we did not have this much data. We did not have these many applications running, right? These days, if we talk about businesses, we are talking about data that is based on these online platforms, whether you talk about your YouTube, whether you talk about your shopping websites, online, maybe your food ordering websites, or all the service apps and all those that we see, right? There's so much data that is working on internet these days, right? So we also have infrastructure in place that supports this data. But if you go back like 15 years from now, okay, the problem was in order to start a business or in order to host an application or a website, you had to first set up your infrastructure and you needed manpower to manage this infrastructure because we did not have people enough to actually go ahead and manage these things, or they were not trained enough to handle this kind of infrastructure. So what that meant was, one, we were paying a lot of money for setting up this infrastructure and then putting up a lot of money for the manpower who would actually go ahead and maintain these servers. Okay. What this also meant was you also had to plan a lot of things because you are paying for servers. And in those days, technology was such that you could not upscale or downscale easily. That means let's assume that you have a particular application where you experience certain amount of traffic. In those days, what used to happen was if the traffic is too high, in order to increase your resource capacity, you had to put in a lot of efforts. So that meant you could not just go ahead and upscale right away to meet the requirements of increasing traffic. And you also could not pre-plan everything because if you just assume that, okay, I need this much amount of storage, this much amount of capacity. What that would mean was, if I'm using a particular resource and if I'm overutilizing it, again, I'll have to add more resources. And if I'm underutilizing it, then I'm already paying a lot of money and I'm not using these resources to the brim or to their complete capacity, right? So it was my loss in all cases. As a business owner, I had to spend a lot of time thinking about all these issues, all these pointers. And that is why we needed an approach that could actually help us solve these problems. So as I mentioned, data has grown these days and the way we handle this data has also changed. And one of the ways that has changed is thanks to cloud. We'll understand how cloud helps here. Okay. So these are some of the challenges that I have already discussed, but to summarize it up for you. Basically, we are talking about investing heavily for your setup, investing into resources who can manage and monitor these resources, scalability is one issue, and less time to focus on your business. Now, some of these problems, they are still prevalent. If you talk about your on-premise infrastructure, which pretty much works similar to what we just discussed, you will still face these problems. And that is why people are wanting to move to cloud these days, because cloud helps you solve these problems. Let's see, how does cloud helps you solve all these problems, or how is cloud at least little more beneficial than the approach that we have right now. Okay. So when we talk about cloud computing, it is very analogous to electricity supply. Now, when you talk about electricity supply to your house, we are talking about electricity boards, right? That provide certain amount of electricity to you. And this electricity is made available to you in the form of all the setup wires that they have in place, right? So as a user, what you do is you consume this electricity. When you say consume, you just press buttons, right? You switch on, switch off your lights, you switch on, switch off your ACs, refrigerators, and a number of other things. At the end of the month, you are being charged saying that, okay, this is the amount of units that you've consumed. Please pay your electricity bill or for the amount of units that you've consumed. Now, you are not maintaining and monitoring these servers, or you are not maintaining and monitoring any electricity here, right? Your electricity board is doing that for you. All you do is you switch on and switch off the buttons, and you consume that electricity and pay the bill for the units you've consumed, right? Now, when you talk about cloud computing, what it does is it works similarly. What cloud computing vendors say is, will give you all the requirements that you have, all the setup that we've discussed, right? We'll take care of everything. We'll maintain and monitor it for you. You just put your applications, put your data on it, and tell us what do you want to maintain and monitor. We'll let you do that, and accordingly we'll charge you. Also, you don't have to buy our services. You have to rent them. That means use it on pay-as-you-go model. If you want a particular server for like 2 hours, use it for 2 hours. If you want it for like 1 hour, use it for 1 hour. And then when you're done using it, we'll charge you for that and you pay it accordingly. So since you are renting it, you are not paying a lot of money. And since it is metered usage or pay-as-you-go usage, you won't feel dissatisfied for the fact that you've opted for this particular option, because you can always change and chop, right? You use it for like 10 days and you don't feel it is meeting up your needs, it is costing you more, you can switch to something else, and that is how you save money. Or it could also be a situation where your business requires you to run a particular application only for 10 days. So why buy a complete server for it? Maybe you can opt for cloud computing, and when you do that, you can actually rent these resources for that duration. And when you feel that, okay, I don't have to run this application any longer, you release those resources. So even as a small scale business, you are saving a lot of money, a lot of time, right? To give you an example, let's assume that I am an individual who wants to start a website because I feel that I have an idea in my brain and I do not have a lot of capital to support it. I just go ahead and launch a website these days and I can host it on some cloud platform, and that would help me solve my problem. I'm not paying heavily for these applications either. Why? Because if it does not work out, I'll get rid of all the things that I've invested in, right? Because I'm using it on pay-as-you-go model. So that is what cloud computing does for you. So when we talk about cloud computing, to define what cloud computing is, you can say that cloud computing is something that enables on-demand services to you. Now, these services can be your computation service, your storage service, your networking service, etc., right? Which can be accessed through the internet. And as a user, you are not required to maintain and monitor these resources. The plus point is, since you're accessing it through the internet, note one thing, that you can access these resources across the globe. Let's assume you're sitting in one part of the world and your resource lies in the other part of the world. But you can fire up your laptop, switch into your console and start accessing that resource no matter where it is, using your system by being at one place in the world, right? So that is one benefit of cloud computing. What are the features it offers? It's highly scalable, right? I've already talked about that, but to give you some idea, some insight on the subject, when you say scalable, we are talking about resources that can scale up and scale down. When you say scale down, it is called as elasticity. That is how easily can your resource again compress back. So as I've mentioned, I've given this example already. You are experiencing certain set of traffic. Now you feel that you need to scale up. With cloud computing, you can do that within minutes. Okay, you can scale up your resource right away, and then you can handle all that traffic. Let's assume that you're done using that resource, or the traffic has gone down again. You can always scale back, and you'll be charged only for the scaled up resource for a limited amount of time. Now with cloud computing, you are getting charged on per second basis, per minute basis, per hour basis, based on the unit or the resource that you're using. Okay, so some resources even charge you on per hourly and per minute basis. That means if you're using a resource for like 23 minutes, you'll be paying only for 23 minutes. So if you've scaled up a resource for like maybe for an hour, and then you scale down again, so only for that 1 hour you'll be charged for the scaled up resources. Other benefit is you can scale horizontally and vertically as well. When you say vertical scaling, that means you are adding more computation, more power to the existing resource, and you can even scale horizontally. That means you can add more machines to your existing machine and you can increase your power horizontally. Pay as you go model, I've already talked about this. Flexible, yes. When we talk about particular vendors, I'll tell you why these resources are flexible. Okay. Secure and disaster recovery. Again, we'll talk about that when we talk about some of the vendors that we have, and we'll discuss why are these platforms secure, as well as what makes these platforms disaster safe. Okay. So let's just go ahead and talk about something else meanwhile. Now, since we've understood what cloud computing is, why do we need it and stuff like that, let's now go ahead and understand what are different cloud service models that we have at our disposal. Okay. So when you say cloud service models, we have three of them. You have your IaaS, PaaS, SaaS. Okay. So why do we need service models in first place? Okay. So we have our service models, and then we are going to also go ahead and discuss our deployment models. But why do we need service models in first place? Service model is something that tells you how is this cloud servicing you? How is it configuring the resources for you? Okay. That means as a consumer, what am I trying to consume here? And is my vendor giving me those resources in that form of service? This is what service model is all about. Now, if I define IaaS, the definition of service model would fall in place for you. So let's try and understand what IaaS is. This is infrastructure as a service. That means here the vendor gives you infrastructure in the form of a service. So you can consume the complete infrastructure, on top of which you can actually go ahead and configure certain other things, be it your platform, and then put your applications on top of it. Okay. Other thing is your PaaS. Now, when you say PaaS, here the complete platform is given to you. You just go ahead and put forth your applications, your data on top of it, and start running it. Okay. And finally, you have your SaaS, that is software as a service. Here, as a user, you are given the complete software to use. You do not configure the infrastructure, neither the platform, nor do you go ahead and put forth your applications. You are given a complete software that you want to use. You consume it, and at the end of the your tenure, you pay for the software that you consumed. I'm sure that many of you still have questions as to what do these things exactly mean if we are to talk about it from an implementation perspective. To answer that question, I'm going to go ahead and discuss these pointers a little more. So this is what these service models look like. Here, there's a clear classification telling you what you're going to manage as a user and what would the vendor be managing. Okay. So when you talk about infrastructure as a service, as I mentioned, the infrastructure is managed by a vendor, right? Be it your networking, storage, servers, or virtualization requirements, all of these are controlled by your vendor. You as a user, you decide what OS you want, what middleware you want, and what kind of applications and data you want to run on top of it. Okay. So there is a lot of things that you can control here. But what that also means is you have to configure all these things by yourself, the ones that you see under you manage. Okay. When you talk about platform as a service, all the requirements that concern a platform are managed by your vendor. Okay. What that means is whether you talk about the infrastructure till virtualization, and even the middleware and operating system and runtime are managed. What you manage is just the applications and the data. Okay. So you bring in your applications, you bring in your data, and you start using it. Okay. SaaS, here the complete software is given to you. You just put forth your data, just like your Gmail, right? You type emails and send it. That is your data. You are not concerned about anything else here. So this is what IaaS, PaaS, and SaaS are all about. To give you a layman example, let's assume that you are trying to consume a pizza. Now you have options. 1, you can create your pizza at home. 2, you can order a pizza. And 3, you can go out and eat a pizza. So how does this work? When you make it yourself, you basically control a lot of things here. Okay, you'll get in all the ingredients, start making your own dough, start putting forth all the toppings, bake your pizza, use your utensils, and then start eating it, right? So this is your IaaS. You are configuring everything as per your needs. PaaS, that is platform as a service. This is like a place where basically you order your pizza, right? So the pizza is prepared by somebody else and it is delivered to you. You just get it at home, you put it in your own utensils, start consuming it, right? So it's like a platform being given to you. The other thing is your SaaS, that is software as a service. Now here, what happens is you go out and eat your pizza. Nothing is controlled by you. You go out, you tell them what pizza you want, they'll make it for you, put it on your plate, put it on a table, and all the services also provided to you. All you do is you consume that pizza. This is software as a service where you just consume the software. You do not do anything else. So this was about how services provided to individuals or to consumers through cloud vendors. Let us now go ahead and understand what deployment models are. Okay. So when we talk about deployment models, this is how, this is again a way in which cloud offering is given to you, but this is more on terms of what you control from a security perspective. Okay. So when you talk about deployment models, we have 4 on our plate. You have your public cloud, you have your private cloud, you have your community cloud, and you have your hybrid cloud. Okay. So when we talk about these clouds, if you talk about public in particular, so public is an offering where your vendor lies publicly. So a vendor owns a particular set of servers which are open to public for usage. Okay. So when you talk about a public cloud, this is where all your resources would reside, and probably you might be sharing that space with someone else. So it's not like something like sharing a room in a PG, paying guest, right? It is not similar to that. The reason for that is in a PG, probably you stay in a room where all the stuff lies in the same place, right? Probably your roommate might be able to see it and all those things. But when you talk about a public cloud, it is similar. Yes, you would be sharing the space with someone else. Let's assume that there's a data center in Mumbai, India. Your data resides on that data center. Okay. There could be somebody else whose data also resides on that data center. But there's virtual classification that is done here. You never get to see whose data is there. Neither does that person get to see where your data lies. So there's this logical isolation, virtual isolation that keeps the data safe and secure from each other. But since we are talking about a public platform that is being used by many, at times people question its security level because people with critical data might not want to put your data there. But these days, these platforms are very secure and people are actually putting the data on public clouds. Okay. Now, what are the benefits of using a public cloud? One of the major benefits is, since you're sharing your space with it is cheaper compared to other platforms or other deployment models. Now, let's assume that we are talking about data that is very mission critical and you want to keep it secure. Then you can set up your private cloud. It is very similar to your on-premise infrastructure, just the fact that it is maintained by a cloud vendor. Okay. But since it is called as private, the major thing here is you are not sharing your resources with other people. Those resources are limited to you and for usage, your usage only. Okay. So that is why we called it as a private cloud. It is costlier compared to a public cloud. Then you have your hybrid cloud. Now let's assume that you have your 80% of data that is just for the movement's sake, and it is not very mission critical, but the 20% of it is very important to you. So in that case, you can put that 20% of your data in an offering which is very private in nature, not shared by anyone, and remaining 80% can be on a public cloud. So this kind of setting is called as a hybrid cloud. It's costlier than public cloud and cheaper than private cloud. So you can take out or opt for this model as well. Then you have your community cloud. Now, when we talk about community cloud, we are talking about an approach where let's talk about, or let me give you an example. When you talk about COVID, now the world has come together in finding out a medication or a vaccine for COVID, right? So there are similar people working with similar causes. So if there's a data that is being accessed by many, why not put it on a community cloud where everybody can access it, right? But it is limited to a particular organization. This was just an example, the COVID one. Don't take it too seriously. Let me give you another example. Let's assume that there's an organization that is into education. It has its maybe universities or colleges in different states. So there are like 4 colleges that communicate with each other. There could be common data that all these 4 colleges use, which needs to be looked into. In that case, you can have a community cloud, which is common to all 4 colleges, but there's a common point where you can always go ahead and access that data. So this is what your community cloud is all about. And this is what your deployment models are all about. So I hope by now that you people have understood what deployment models are. Okay. Guys, I would like to inform you that if you've not liked this video yet, please go ahead and like this video and also subscribe to Great Learning YouTube channel, because you people doing that means a lot to all of us, and it inspires us to go ahead and create such videos for you people. So do go ahead and do that. Make sure you hit the like button and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Popular cloud vendors. Okay, so let's try and understand what are the popular cloud vendors that are there in the market. And we are specifically going to talk about public cloud vendors because they're very popular, and currently everybody is wanting to move to public cloud for various benefits it offers. So let's try and understand what these popular cloud vendors are and how do they operate. Okay. So when we talk about popular public cloud vendors that are there in the market, the first one that should come to your mind is Amazon Web Services. It is one of the best cloud service providers that is there in the market. Offers 250 plus services when you talk about cloud computing services, and serves in 245 plus countries. So that should give you an idea how wide a reach Amazon Web Services has. Okay. Next to that is your Microsoft Azure, which again is a popular cloud service vendor, not that big of a market share compared to Amazon Web Services, but it is catching up. If you compare its year-on-year growth, it's growing at a faster rate compared to Amazon Web Services. It is a Microsoft stack of product, offers numerous cloud computing services, and serves in many countries across the globe. One of the benefits of Microsoft Azure is it readily integrates with Microsoft stack of products. Being a Microsoft product itself, it gives you that integratability, and that is what makes it so good. Okay. Google Cloud Platform. Now it is comparatively a younger cloud platform that is there in the market, but it is also very good. Not as many services as the other 2 platforms provide, neither does it serve in these many countries. But the benefit of Google Cloud is it is very good when you talk about big data handling, or if you talk about machine learning models and stuff like that. It is very pronounced for it, and it offers services at a very affordable price. It supports per second billing as well in many cases, and it helps do a lot of cost optimization when you talk about power consumptions on these data centers. It is also a home to popular platforms like YouTube, Gmail, etc. Right? So that itself tell you how much data does Google Cloud Platform handle, right? IBM is little anomaly here. Let's not get into the details of what IBM is. It is also a cloud vendor, cloud platform, but it's comparatively lesser when you compare it with these 3 models. They're pretty similar in nature, and that is why I talked about them in this particular slide. Okay, so let's just go ahead and take a look at the different service vendors that we have. I'm gonna show you how their interfaces look and what all can we do with these cloud vendors. Okay, so let's just do that. Okay, so this is how the AWS Management Console looks like. We also have Azure Portal. Okay, I'm gonna show you Azure Portal too. Okay, and then we have our Google Cloud. So let's first start with the AWS console, right? So this is how the AWS console looks like. Okay, now all these 3 consoles, these are free tier. That means if you sign into these consoles, there is a certain set of services that is made available to you people free of cost. So you do not have to pay for these resources. Okay. To start with, note one thing, that all these resources come with a upper cap. So when you say that these services are made available to you free of cost, there is a certain limit to which you can use these resources. Say for example, S3 is a storage service on AWS. Now you can access that storage service up to 5 GB. If you use it more than that, you'll be charged. This is under the free tier. If you are using a paid account, then the limit of S3 is very high. I'm just giving you an example. Okay. So what this means is, maybe you can launch certain types of instances which have basic configuration. You cannot launch higher configuration instances free of cost. So they don't fall under free tier. Now the aim of free tier is so that you people can go ahead and practice or get started with cloud computing. Okay. So this is how the AWS Management Console looks like. You see, you can access all these services here. I've mentioned a plethora of services it offers. You see, you scroll down, you'll get access to these services. Okay. You can even arrange these services alphabetically. Right now they are grouped under particular categories like your computation, your storage, your blockchain and stuff like that. Okay. You also see certain services that you've used recently in the history, or you can search them here if you want to. If you click on services, as I mentioned, you get all of these here and here. Okay. You can pin your resources here. If you click on it, it will ask you what resource you want to pin. You can just go ahead and pin it there. Okay. Likewise, you can also go ahead and remove these resources if you don't want to use them. All the other information, what region are you operating from, all the details are here. Your support tab is here, and all the details about your personal profile would be here. You can sign in, sign out from here. You click on a particular resource and its particular console will open, and you can start using that resources to meet your needs. Say for example, when you talk about EC2 here, you can launch your instances here to meet your needs. Okay. So let this page load. Once it does, we'll see. And we are not going to go ahead and launch a resource. I'm just showing you. You see all the information you would be here. If I click on running instances, I can launch the instances to meet my needs. And as I mentioned, these resources fall under free tier. Some of them, not all. For some reason, the internet is slow today. That's sad. You see, it's written here. It's free tier eligible. That means I can launch these resources and I won't get charged. So there are certain resources that are free, certain resources that are not free. This is not free, but this is, right? So you can always go ahead and launch these resources, configure them. So we talked about service models. So this is an IaaS service. Here you can launch virtual machines and configure them to meet your needs. Similarly, you have your Microsoft Azure platform here, where you can launch your Azure resources as well. It is fairly similar. You'll get your notifications here. Okay. All the profile details here. And you do not have console like AWS offers. There are certain services that have been listed here, but not as smooth as AWS. But all the resources you want, that would be available here. You can click on create a resource and then you can choose the resource that you want to launch. So this is how this platform looks like. And similar to this is your GCP. It's both these platforms are fairly similar. You see, here you'll get all the options that you want. What do you want to launch and stuff like that. So you can select a particular resource and launch that resource, right? Overview, cases and all those things. This was about support. This is about IAM and launching resources here. So if you go to security, you can launch a security resources from here as well. Okay. So this is how these platforms look like. And this is how the AWS, Azure and GCP consoles look like. So this brings us to the end of this session. I believe we've talked about quite a few pointers. To summarize this video, we've discussed why and what of cloud computing. Why do we need it? What it is. We've talked about what are different service models. How is cloud computing services offered to the consumer? How do we control its security in different models? For that, we've seen what deployment models are. We've also discussed some popular service vendors and seen how their consoles look like. So this brings us to the end of this session. Before we go out and log off, I would like to inform you that Great Learning has come up with Great Learning Academy initiative, where there are 80 plus free courses that you people can register to. And on completion of these courses, you'll be getting certifications that you can add to your LinkedIn profile or to your resume, and that would hold value for you. I would also like to inform you that we come up with such sessions and such videos quite frequently. So register to Great Learning YouTube channel, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and like this video if you liked what you saw. Thank you.